I've always been interested in motorcycles because you could always store a dozen motorcycles where you park one car, you know. So these were the first, quote, super bikes.
Jay Leno definitely has one of the world's most expensive motorcycle collections. But what if we told you that he's currently hiding some of the rarest, most jaw-dropping bikes ever built, and some he's not even supposed to have?
I just have a fascination for these bikes. I always thought they had the most beautiful gas tank in motorcycles. Out of the everyday bruff, this is one I use quite a bit.
Inside Jay's collection lies everything from raw power to groundbreaking precision, with bikes that redefined speed, engineering, and design. Each of these bikes holds a puzzle piece that reveals an extremely shocking story. And most people don't realize that the secrets behind some names in this collection would change everything you thought you knew about motorcycles. Number 10. 1939 Crocker. Big Tank, the American Beast. When it comes to bikes that are truly legendary, the 1939 Crocker Big Tank is definitely close to the top of that list. If you're into motorcycles and you haven't heard of a Crocker, that's okay, because these bikes are so rare and exclusive that even some collectors go their whole lives without seeing one in person. But Jay Leno actually owns one. And not just any Crocker, but the Big Tank itself. One of the most valuable and iconic models ever built. What makes this bike so ridiculously special is the fact that the Crocker name is basically the Rolls-Royce of American motorcycles. Back in the 1930s, Albert Crocker, a brilliant engineer and former Indian motorcycle executive, decided he wanted to make the fastest, most powerful bikes on the road. And he did just that. The 1939 Crocker Big Tank was a direct challenge to Harley-Davidson and Indian. And guess what? It won that challenge. This bike came with a massive 1,000 cubic centimeters V-twin engine. That might not sound wild by today's standards, but in the 1930s, that was like putting a really powerful engine into something light and small. The Crocker could hit speeds over 100 miles per hour, when most bikes back then struggled to hit 80. In fact, riders knew that if you were riding a Crocker, you were untouchable on the street. It was the muscle bike before muscle bikes even existed. When it comes to its design, the Big Tank nickname comes from its oversized fuel tank. It was a standout feature and a practical one too. More fuel meant longer rides, and the curved, sculpted design of the tank gave the bike a beefy, aggressive look, and it had this raw, industrial elegance to it. It wasn't flashy one bit. It looked fast, and it was fast. Perhaps the most iconic thing about this bike was the fact that Crockers were custom-built. That means no two bikes were exactly the same. Each one is tailored to the rider's preferences, which is just insane when you think about it. That level of personalization made every Crocker feel like a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. Only around 70 Crockers were ever made, and far fewer of the Big Tank versions survived. Today, if one shows up at auction, you're looking at a price more than $500,000. Some have even sold for closer to $1 million. But Jay Leno's Crocker isn't just a showpiece. It's actually a running, roaring part of motorcycle history. He said before that it's one of the finest machines in his entire collection. And coming from Jay, that says a lot. But while the Crocker was all about power and rugged craftsmanship, this next bike in Jay's collection once marked the dawn of precision engineering and innovation. And if you think that's impressive, wait till you see the third bike on this list. Number 9. 1969 Honda CB750 Sandcast. The Japanese Revolution. Every bike enthusiast knows that the 1969 Honda CB750 Sandcast brought about a groundbreaking revolution in the motorcycle world. If the Crocker was about raw power and rebellion, the CB750 was all about precision, reliability, and rewriting the motorcycle rulebook. This bike is so iconic that it was named the Bike of the Century. So why does Jay Leno treasure this particular bike so much? Well, first off, the Honda made history. Before the CB750, big bikes were mostly temperamental, expensive, and kind of intimidating. But Honda came in and changed the entire game. Just like that, the world's first true superbike was born. If you're wondering how the Sandcast name came about, there's a very cool story behind it. When Honda was getting ready to release the CB750, they weren't 100% sure how the market would react. So they made the early engine cases using a low-cost sandcasting process, which is basically hand-poured aluminum molds. These early sandcast engines ended up being way rougher and more unique than the later mass-produced die-cast versions. Only the first batch of about 7,400 bikes used sandcast cases, which makes them super collectible today. And of course, Jay owns one of those ultra-rare originals. Performance-wise, the CB750 was a monster for its time. It came with a 736 cubic centimeter inline-4 engine, producing around 68 horsepower. It had a top speed of about 120 miles per hour, and it was smooth as butter. It also came with a front disc brake, and although that might sound standard now, in 1969, that was a huge deal. It was basically the first production motorcycle to have it, and it instantly set a new standard for safety and performance. Design-wise, it looked clean, functional, and just a little bit badass. The 4 exhaust pipes spilling out from that inline-4 engine gave it an unmistakable look and a sweet sound. Honda had built a bike that looked great, rode even better, and didn't break down every other weekend. Suddenly, riders who had never owned a bike before were suddenly lining up to buy one. It was fast enough for thrill seekers, but practical enough for commuters. It didn't leak oil, didn't overheat, and didn't need a mechanic living in your garage. And for collectors like Jay Leno, the Sandcast version is like holding the blueprint of a new era. Number 8. 1929 Scott Flying Squirrel, the featherweight racer. This next bike in Jay's collection sounds like something out of a cartoon, but don't let the name fool you. The 1929 Scott Flying Squirrel was cutting edge back in its day, and it's still one of the most unique machines in Jay's collection. When you see it in motion, you'll get why it was called the Flying Squirrel. It's quick, nimble, and just a little unpredictable. But what exactly makes this nearly 100-year-old British motorcycle such a standout? First off, it's a 2-stroke engine in an era when everyone else was going 4-stroke. Scott Motorcycles was already famous for doing things differently, and with the Flying Squirrel, they went all in. This 596 cubic centimeter twin-cylinder 2-stroke engine was a beast in disguise. It had punchy acceleration, smooth delivery, and a top speed that could surprise just about anyone watching it glide by in 1929. And yes, it was water-cooled. In 1929, when most motorcycles were still air-cooled and prone to overheating, the Flying Squirrel was way ahead of the curve. That radiator up front isn't just for show. It's actually a legit performance feature. This bike could cruise longer and cooler than many of its rivals. Jay's version is actually one of the later models, so it features some refinements over the earlier editions, like improved suspension and a more streamlined design. But what really sets the Flying Squirrel apart is its place in motorcycle history. This wasn't a mass-market machine. It was designed with performance in mind, often used in races, hill climbs, and endurance events. Back then, it turned heads, and even today, it still stops traffic. Every bike enthusiast knows Jay has a thing for odd, overlooked machines, and the Flying Squirrel fits that mold perfectly. It's rare, quirky, and mechanically fascinating. It's basically the only squirrel he could trust in his garage. Number 7. 1924 ACE XP4, the mighty American machine. This next bike didn't just turn heads, it actually terrified people. The 1924 ACE XP4 wasn't just ahead of its time. It was so powerful and aggressive that when it first hit the roads, Bean and even the seasoned riders had second thoughts. And of course, Jay Leno had to have one, because the XP4 isn't just a bike. It's probably one of the boldest statements ever made on two wheels. The ACA Motor Corporation was founded by William Henderson, the same guy behind Henderson Motorcycles. He loved to make big, fast, and inline-4 motorcycles, but when he launched ACE, he wanted to go even bigger. And that's how he created the XP4, a one-off, factory-built experimental prototype whose mission was speed. This beast was powered by a monstrous 1,265 cubic centimeter inline-4 engine. In an age when most bikes were topping out at 40 or 50 miles per hour, the XP4 casually pushed past a whopping 100 miles per hour. Remember that in 1924, most roads were still dirt, most helmets were optional, and suspension was basically just a polite suggestion. Yet the XP4 was roaring through the era, like it was late for the future. It wasn't just fast, it was also smooth. The XP4 had almost no vibration, which was unheard of back then. The bike's long, low stance also gave it incredible stability at high speeds, and to top off its incredible features, it also looked like a piece of art flying down the highway. But what makes this bike extremely unique is that only one XP4 was ever officially built. Jay Leno, being Jay, managed to get hold of an authentic recreation using original ACA parts and meticulous blueprints. So, it's as close to the real XP4 as you'll ever find on the planet, and doesn't just keep it lying around in his garage, he actually rides it. But if the XP4 is an American muscle, up next is a bike that screams German precision. It looks like a military tank, rides like a luxury car, and has an engine that runs smoother than butter on hot toast. Number 6. 1938 Zundap K800, the German masterpiece. If there's one motorcycle in Jay Leno's collection that looks like it came straight out of a World War II film, it is the 1938 Zundap K800, a machine so meticulously engineered it could have been designed by a team of watchmakers. This is the only flat-4 shaft-drive motorcycle Germany produced before the war, and let's just say it shows. The Zundap K800 is a serious machine. This bike wasn't created for flashy street rides. It was made to perform, with the kind of rugged durability that German military engineering is known for. And while it often gets overshadowed by BMW's wartime bikes, the K800 holds its own as one of the most important motorcycles of its era. When it comes to design, the heart of the K800 is its 798 cubic centimeters flat-4 engine, mounted longitudinally and cooled by air. That engine wasn't just powerful for the time, it was silky smooth. Flat-4s are known for balance and low vibration, and the K800 proved it with quiet, refined performance even at higher speeds. The engine was paired with a 4-speed gearbox, connected to the rear wheel via a shaft drive, making it super clean, super efficient, and way ahead of its time. The bike puts out about 20 horsepower, which might not sound like much today, but remember, we're talking about the 1930s. For a bike made to haul a full-size sidecar and maybe even a couple of soldiers or cargo, it did its job and did it well. Visually, this bike commands respect. It has that unmistakable pre-war German aesthetic. It has clean lines, matte black metal, exposed mechanicals, and a squat, muscular frame. There's something industrial and almost intimidating about it. In fact, when you look at it, you instantly know that this bike wasn't built just for fun. It was built for function. Jay Leno's model is fully restored, but he's kept that rugged, utilitarian vibe intact. It doesn't have any chrome overload or flashy paint. Instead, it's just pure vintage. But while the Zundap K800 was about strength and precision, the next bike in Jay's garage is all about speed, myth, and outright British flair. It's the stuff of legends. It's sleek, it's black, and it once hit 150 miles per hour in 1948. Number 5, Vincent Black Lightning, John Edgar Special, the king of speed. In the late 1940s, World War II had ended, and the world was slowly rebuilding. But while most motorcycle manufacturers were still producing rather sensible post-war bikes, Vincent Motorcycles made the jaw-dropping decision to go in a totally different direction. He decided to build the fastest motorcycle the world has ever seen. And just like that, the Vincent Black Lightning was born. Out of all the Black Lightnings ever made, and there were only 30 of them, the John Edgar Special is the one that truly broke the mold. This isn't just like any other Vincent Black Lightning. This one was built in 1948, custom commissioned by American businessman and racer John Edgar, and was specially tuned for only one purpose: to break records. And break records it did. The John Edgar Special is most famous for being the motorcycle that Raleigh Free rode into the history books at the Bonneville Salt Flats, setting a new United States land speed record. If you've ever seen that iconic black and white photo of a guy lying flat out on a motorcycle in a bathing suit and shower cap, that was Raleigh Free. And that was this exact bike. To date, that image is motorcycle culture carved into stone. What makes the Vincent Black Lightning, especially this one, so legendary is the fact that underneath its slim, aggressive frame is a 998 cubic centimeters V-twin engine, pushing out an astounding 70 horsepower. The engine featured high-lift cams, larger carburetors, and polished internals, all custom-tuned for maximum performance. It had an incredibly lightweight frame, magnesium parts, and aluminum components to cut down its weight. It's almost as if every inch of this bike screams, "Go faster!" And it wasn't just built for a straight line either. The Black Lightning had a girdrolic front fork, a hybrid of girder and hydraulic suspension that gave it surprisingly decent handling for its time. Braking came from massive twin drums and that gorgeous all-black finish. That wasn't just for looks. It was actually part of its Black Lightning persona, meant to intimidate and impress. Jay Leno's connection to this bike isn't just about collecting something valuable. It's about owning a piece of two-wheeled history that changed the game. Even among his vast garage of motorcycles, this one holds a kind of mythical status, making it one of the rarest in his collection. He doesn't ride it often. With its historical significance, who would? But when he talks about it, you can see the reverence in the way he describes the engineering, the story behind Raleigh Free's daredevil ride, and the fact that it came from a time when speed was achieved through raw courage and mechanical genius. It all gives you chills. This bike didn't just pave the way for speed records. It also sparked an arms race in motorcycle design. After the Black Lightning roared into the spotlight, everyone wanted in on the game. But if there was ever a machine worthy of going toe-to-toe with the Vincent Black Lightning in terms of style, power, and sheer prestige, it's the 1930 Superior SS100, also known as the Rolls-Royce of motorcycles and a personal favorite of Jay Leno. Number 4. 1930 Superior SS100. The ultimate gentleman's ride. Jay Leno's 1930 Brose Superior SS100 isn't just a vintage motorcycle, it's pure class and a symbol of British craftsmanship at its absolute finest. This was the bike of the elite, the one you bought if you had deep pockets, impeccable taste, and a serious need for speed. And it wasn't just hype. The SS100 actually delivered on the expectations. It was built by George Bruff in Nottingham, England, and every single SS100 that rolled out of his workshop was hand-assembled, tested, and customized for its buyer. But many people do not know that before it even reached the customer, it had to prove itself. Each motorcycle was individually tested at 100 miles per hour, mph or more, before it was considered road-ready. And that's how the name SS100, which stands for Super Sports 100 miles per hour, came about. This was a motorcycle that promised triple digits in speed when most bikes were struggling to hit 60. George Bruff wasn't shy about it either. He made sure the SS100 wasn't mass-produced, but was curated, like a fine watch or a custom-tailored suit. When it comes to performance, the 1930 version of the SS100 that Jay owns is powered by a 986 cubic centimeters V-twin engine, though some models were later fitted with matchless engines. With a weight of about 385 pounds, this motorcycle was made to scream down the road. George Bruff wanted the best of the best, and he had no problem borrowing from the aviation world to get it. The handling was refined, the ride was surprisingly smooth, and the acceleration made plenty of cars jealous. But the SS100 wasn't just about numbers, it was also about presence. The bike had this long, low-slung profile with graceful curves and perfect symmetry. From the polished gas tank to the hand-levered controls, every inch was intentionally made. Jay's version is restored, of course, but he's made sure to keep that vintage elegance intact. Most people don't know, but the SS100 once had a very famous fan, the one and only T.E. Lawrence, also known as Lawrence of Arabia. He owned several Bruffs and was so obsessed with them that he called one Boanerges, which means son of thunder in ancient Greek. Unfortunately, it was also a Bruff SS100 that Lawrence was riding when he tragically crashed in 1935. His death led to the first serious research into motorcycle helmets and brain injury prevention. So yeah, the SS100 didn't just influence bike design, it also changed motorcycle safety history. It's no wonder why Jay Leno's love for this machine runs deep. And you can't blame him, because there's something about the hand-built nature, the legendary backstory, and the raw power that makes it feel alive. And while the SS100 is all about luxury and tradition, the next bike in Jay's lineup throws the rulebook out the window. It's weird, it's rare, and it's got a radial airplane engine mounted inside the front wheel. Number 3. 1922 Megala Touring, the front engine phenomenon. Imagine cruising down the road and people are staring at your motorcycle, not because of the paint job or the exhaust note, but because your engine is literally spinning inside the front wheel. That's the magic of the 1922 Megala Touring. And yes, Jay Leno has one sitting in his garage like it's no big deal. The Megala isn't just rare, it's one of the strangest motorcycles ever built. It was designed in Germany in the early 1920s by Fritz Gockerl and Company. The name Megala comes from combining the first two letters of the surnames of its designers, Meixner, Gockerl, and Landgraf. But most people don't remember that. What they do remember is its radial engine sitting front and center, inside the front wheel. The Megala is powered by a 5-cylinder radial engine, mounted inside the front wheel hub. It displaces just 640 cubic centimeters, but what makes it insane is that the entire engine rotates with the wheel. It feels like a miniature airplane engine, but instead of flying, It's rolling down the road. That engine spins at around 6 times per wheel rotation, and it delivers about 14 horsepower. It basically felt like riding a science experiment. But what's even more surprising is the fact that there's no clutch and no transmission. That's right, you'd start the Megala by pushing it and jumping on, like a giant kick scooter. Once it was moving, you would twist the throttle and hope for the best. Now, when it came to stopping the motorcycle, that was another story entirely. The brakes were on the rear only because you couldn't really put a brake inside the spinning engine up front. But despite the crazy design, the Megala actually worked. In fact, it wasn't just some one-off prototype, it actually raced. In fact, a sports version of the Megala even won multiple races, including a German Grand Prix. Jay Leno loves this thing for exactly the reasons you'd expect. It's rare, it's quirky, and it challenges everything we think we know about motorcycle engineering. Only about 2,000 Megalas were ever built, and today, fewer than 10 are known to exist in complete running condition. But up next is a bike that marks the very beginning of America's motorcycle story. The one that kick-started the legend of small, simple, and iconic motorcycles. Number 2. 1902 Indian Camelback. The birth of American motorcycling. If you want to talk about history on two wheels, you have to talk about the 1902 Indian Camelback. This isn't just like any other motorcycle. It's the first production model from Indian Motorcycle Company, America's oldest motorcycle brand. And of course, Jay Leno has one sitting pretty in his collection. Because how do you call yourself a motorcycle guy if you don't own the very bike that started it all? Back in the 20th century, motorcycles were still a brand new idea. A few inventors were experimenting with bolting engines onto bicycles, hoping to build something that could go faster without all the pedaling. But Indians did it first, and they did it right. The 1902 Camelback gets its name from the distinctive gas tank mounted over the rear wheel, shaped like a hump. It kind of looks like a backpack strapped to a bicycle, but it did way more than it looks. In fact, it's safe to say that it was cutting-edge tech back in the day. The engine was a tiny single-cylinder, 1.75 horsepower motor, designed by legendary engineer Oscar Hedstrom. It could cruise at about 25 miles per hour, which was a big deal when most people were still riding horses or pedaling. This bike wasn't just historic, it was incredibly well built for its time. The engine was mounted low in the frame, helping keep the center of gravity nice and stable. That made it smoother and easier to handle than a lot of its early competitors. It also featured a belt drive instead of the more complex chain systems, which made maintenance simpler and more reliable. Jay Leno's example is beautifully restored, right down to the wooden rims and leather saddle. But what makes Jay's Camelback so cool is the fact that it's rideable. There's something really charming about seeing this mechanical antique still kicking after more than a century. Aside from being the first, what makes the Camelback so special is how it laid the foundation for everything that came after. This was the spark that ignited Indians' racing success, its rivalry with Harley-Davidson, and eventually, the entire American motorcycle culture. Without this humble little machine, who knows where motorcycling in the United States would be? And let's not forget that this motorcycle is ultra rare. Only a small number were produced in 1902, and most were either lost to time or destroyed. And so, having one in running condition today is like owning a piece of the Declaration of Independence, except it still runs on gasoline and makes cool little sounds when you ride it. It's easy to see why Jay Leno values the Camelback so much. It's not flashy or fast, but it's pure motorcycle history, in its simplest and most original form. But this next motorcycle in Jay's collection is something that's completely different from the Camelback. We're talking about a race-bred exotic British beast from the post-war era, with a name that sounds like it belongs in a cartoon. Number 1. E90 AJS Porcupine, the racing legend. One of the rarest, most highly coveted motorcycles in Jay Leno's collection vehicles to be the E90 AJS Porcupine. If you've never heard of this bike, don't feel bad, because it's one of those machines that almost sounds like a myth. It's literally a mythical British beast from the post-World War II era that not only changed the game, but also made history in the world of racing. So why the name Porcupine, you may ask? Well, it's a reference to the spiky, intricate cylinder heads that AJ's put on this bike's engine. This was one of the most advanced race bikes of its time, not just because of its unique design, but also because it was ahead of its time in engineering and performance. The E90 AJS Porcupine is powered by a 500 cubic centimeters parallel twin engine, which was incredibly rare for its time. In the late 1940s, most bikes had single-cylinder engines. But it wasn't just the engine that made it special. No, it was the double overhead camshaft design, a feature that was way ahead of its time, that made the bike run smoother, with less vibration, and with a faster top speed compared to its competitors. The bike also had these massive, finned aluminum heads that covered the cylinders, which looked like a porcupine's quills. And not only did these fins help keep the engine cool, but they also made the bike look fiercely unique. You could instantly tell the AJS Porcupine was something different, and not just because of the name, but because the whole bike had this almost intimidating vibe, like it was designed to tear up a racetrack. And of course, it tore up the tracks. The Porcupine was a true racing legend, competing in prestigious events like the Isle of Man TT and the Ulster Grand Prix. The AJS team, led by riders like Les Graham, used the bike to win the 1949 World Championship. That's right, the first ever 500 cubic centimeters World Championship was secured by the AJS Porcupine. This motorcycle was built for speed and precision, not comfort. It had an incredibly tight, minimalist design, with just enough room for the essentials. The rider sat close to the tank, almost hugging the bike in a crouch, with the rest of the machine focused on performance. Today, only a handful of E90 AJS Porcupines are left in existence, and of those, even fewer are in running condition. Jay Leno's example is one of the finest around, and it's kept in pristine condition, ready to be admired by anyone who sees it. Just like the rest of his collection, Jay doesn't just collect bikes. He actually preserves history. Well, besides the fact that it's a true piece of racing history, this bike is probably so special to Jay because it's also a testament to the innovation and boldness of post-war Britain, which was looking for ways to reclaim its reputation on the world stage. But what do you think? Which of these legendary bikes would you ride if given the chance, and why? Tell us in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.